Good afternoon, everyone. Aaron Thompson. I'm sitting here at the Capitol, just got through testifying, and I wish I could be there in person with everyone as we were hoping to be with this series of seminars back in earlier in this month. But, we ran into an issue, but we are smart enough to know how to take advantage of issues and make something good out of it. It's my privilege today, though, to get to introduce a friend of mine, someone who I've known for a long time, but someone who I believe all of us would not just learn from, but all of us would understand that her life story, as well as her professional career, has really advanced her to this space that we need to hear from her. Dr. Tia McNair is someone, once again, that I've worked with over the years. And even though she doesn't look like it, she's got 30 years of experience in doing this work. She is heavily recognized on issues of equity, inclusive excellence, high impact practices, which we're talking about a lot, obviously, but also how to create a campus climate that would be inviting for anyone and everyone to come and stay till they get that degree or credential that matters. The other piece that I really like about Tia is that over the years we've worked together in identifying strategies that we can incorporate in a variety of places, whether it's in curriculum or whether it's really in our pedagogical techniques. Identifying those learning resources, those learning outcomes that gets us to a place where we can create the kind of what I call human infrastructure that's going to take our citizens to the next level. And obviously, for a lot of our younger people, the next generation of leaders. She was the 2024 recipient of the Outstanding Contribution to Higher Education, which is an award that NASPA puts out. Tia, I didn't know this till I was reading your bio. Congratulations. Let me just say that on air. You so well deserve it. And in March 2020, Tia was named one of 35 outstanding women who have tackled some of the higher education toughest challenges. And she exhibited extraordinary leadership skills over the years. And that was some of the reasons why she received that recognition. Tia, thank you for really being nimble. I mean, sorry we couldn't have you in person in February, but you would not, even though you probably would have enjoyed being snowed in Kentucky, we were glad you were not. And we are glad you're with us now. And good to see you, my friend. I hope you have a great conversation with our people here in Kentucky. We're doing good stuff. I know you read about it. Yeah, help us to do better stuff. Thank you, Tia.
Oh, thank you so much, Aaron. And it's wonderful to be with all of you. And I wish that I was able to be there in person, but I don't know if you all knew this. I was halfway there. I was in Atlanta, and they said, you've got to turn around and catch a flight back because it's about to snow really, really bad in Kentucky. So I was trying to get there. So I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Sorry that we couldn't be there. I couldn't be there in person with all of you on that first day. So the work that we're doing and that we want to talk about today is so important to the success and the academic and social mobility of so many students, all students within the Kentucky region. So I just want to say that is that before we even get started, thank you to the staff members at CPE. Thank you to Dr. Aaron Thompson for his leadership. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for the work that you do on a day-to-day basis to support every single student that is at your institutions, that has committed and doing the work, that what they need to do to succeed and what you are doing to support them in their success. Our goal has always been about supporting the success of every single student, to help them figure out how they can achieve higher levels of academic and social mobility, how we can prepare them to be critical thinkers and problem solvers, and to actually take those competencies and those skill sets to give back to their communities, to be a vibrant part of their communities, and to have those livable wages in order for them to be able to provide and be successful in however they see fit. So I just want to say, personally, I extend my heartfelt thank you to for the work that you do every single day. I know that many of us give so much more so much more on a daily basis than what is expected. And I just want to say I value and I thank you for that. So I have about an hour with you, about 50 minutes or so. So I'm going to go through what would have been my keynote, but then I'm also going to share with you some resources that I hope that you find useful as you think about how you assess your leadership and where you are and how you can grow. We're all at different spaces and places in where we are in our professional career, as well as where we are in our leadership development. But at the heart of this, we all want to be more student ready. We all want to think about the diversity of the students that we serve from all different backgrounds and all different experiences, and to figure out how can we help them thrive and how can we help them belong within our environment. But it's not just for them, it's for us as educators. How do we create those professional environments that are going to benefit us as well? So I'm going to share with you some tools. We're not going to obviously have time to go through them today, but I hope that you take the time to do your own self-assessment, that you think about and reflection on where you are on your journey, and then how you can contribute to your sphere of influence within Kentucky, but also from a national sense on how you can advance the work to support our shared goals. So I'm going to start and I'm going to share my slides with you. And don't worry, not too many of those, but we are talking about transformational leadership and what it means to be student ready to advance our student success goals. And I'm going to first start off with these questions. If you see me speak before, I'm always about inquiry and I'm always about us thinking deeply about how we can be more expansive in this work. And I'm going to use that term expansive a lot because I believe very strongly in the expansive nature of our communities, of our resources, and of what we have. Is that I believe that there's enough and there's so much more to go around that we can make sure that every single student has what they need. It's all in the way that we design. So I want to first talk about the intersections between what it means to be have student ready leadership and transformational leadership. And how can education leaders, us as student ready leaders, harness our own individual abilities to support the success among students. We all have individual abilities from variations from our experiences and our backgrounds and who we are. And together, those abilities, those leadership qualities will help us support the success of students, of fellow practitioners, and of our community stakeholders. But in order to get to that, we have to have some type of self-reflection and assessment to know where we are, what we need to do to improve, how that contributes to the mission and the vision of of institutions and that we have deeply committed to and our professional lives are committed to and the students. And then what evidence-based strategies do we need to think about what it means to really be fully inclusive of the diversity of the students that we serve from all different, whether that is veterans, with persons with disabilities, by race and ethnicity, by sexuality, by gender, across the board, socioeconomic. Who are those people that we are serving? And educating to be supportive and have and think about what we need to do to enhance student readiness and to ensure that all students, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of their identities, but informed by that, are prepared for higher levels of academic and social capacity and mobility for their lifelong success. That is our ultimate goal. That's what we see as so important. So I want you to think about these questions, and I am very honored to be the kickoff instead of the end for all of the webinar series. And if you think about these questions for the second day, the webinars that are coming up from the second day of the Student Success Summit, the work that you're doing, keep these questions in mind about how can I personally contribute to this work? What can I do to help support the success of all students in Kentucky and beyond? So, for those of you who are students of higher education and who have studied leadership and development theories, we know that in 1973, Jamestown, we looked at transformational leadership. We talked about that from multiple different perspectives, and we understand this framework. But I always want to believe, and I believe in level setting and providing an opportunity for us to make sure that we're starting from the same place. So when we talk about transformational leadership, we're very much focused on four pillars of that: individualized consideration, inspirational motivation, idealized influence, and intellectual simulation. Again, we're not talking about how they're not ranked. I mean, it looks like that on the page, but it's more of the intersection of those. And so you can put these within any order or any way that you want to think about them. But these are the four components of when in the 1970s, when this theory and this model came out, we were talking about transformational leadership. So when we talk about individualized consideration as a leader, we are talking about our own, how we're empathetic, how we want people that we of our part members of our team to feel heard. We're talking about our emotional intelligence and how we're valuing the individual contribution and thinking about individualized motivational factors for those on our team. What is it that makes each and every person on our team a value part of that? And how do we recognize and appreciate that? So when we talk about inspirational motivation as a leader, we are able to talk about that cohesive vision that we have, regardless of wherever you are, whether you're in advising, whether you are in academic support or tutoring, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're institutional leader, whether you're in the business side, whether you are doing work in the library, whether you are in the grounds, because I believe very much in the work that we do in student readiness, everyone at the institution is a leader and everyone contributes to the educational environment and everyone's an educator, regardless of what role. So we understand the vision. We inspire teams to meet our goals and we have a sense of purpose, and that is articulated. When we talk about idealized influence in this model of transformational leadership, we build trust. We have ethical conduct. We have respect for one another. We are role models in that. We have civility. We can have diverse opinions and different opinions, but we all respect that. We have that influence of our community and who we are, but we also respect the variations in our lived experience and in our backgrounds. And then we also think about that intellectual stimulation where there's open communication. We believe in diverse perspectives as well here. We talk about how multiple ideas from various backgrounds are welcome in this work in order to bring together all these pieces to have transformational leadership. So that's the research piece. That's the piece that centers it. We had this has been a core part of what it means to have that transformational leadership. And then now we're going to talk a little bit about the connections with that with Student Ready, because they're direct connections. When we came out with this in 2016 and we released the second edition in 2022, we really wanted to hone in again on these five areas that it is our responsibility to do the work now of what it means to be more student ready as leaders, to think about the leadership values, our own individual leadership values, but also the values of our institution, how their mission align, how the organizational culture functions, how our strategic priorities align with what it means to be more student ready. And then it's the intentionality of our design. You heard Aaron talk about this at the very beginning. We really want to look at equity and student outcomes. We want to make sure that all students, even the highest performers to the lowest performer, across the board, we want to make sure that everyone is meeting our targeted goals for success. Institutions have graduation rates and retention rates and progression rates and engagement and high impact practices because we know that they're tied to helping students be prepared for workforce and for careers. We want to make sure that everyone is improving on their scales, from, like I said, from the highest performers to those who need that additional support. We're not taking away any resources from one group to get to another. We're saying our job is to understand where everyone is in this design, and the intentionality behind it is then to figure out, okay, what does this group need? What does this group need? That is called the targeted universalism approach. If you get a chance, look that up. We set aspirational goals for all students for success, but we still recognize that our students are entering our institutions with varied levels of preparations and that their lived experiences matter, their backgrounds matter, what they bring, as Terry Yoso talks about, their cultural wealth does matter with how they engage with our environments. And so we do need to take all of those things into consideration as we leverage our ecosystem and our partnerships across multiple areas of the institution and within the community to support student readiness and success for higher levels of academic and social mobility. And our job as educators is so multifaceted because not only are we thinking about the academic side, we are talking about the social and emotional supports that students need in very challenging time, their well-being, meeting their basic needs, which I know that you've talked about as part of the work that you do at CP and at your CPE and at your institutions, but you're going to continue to have conversations about. We know that students who are struggling to meet their basic needs are also have extreme challenges when it comes to making sure that they can fully engage and participate in their learning experiences. So our job in being student ready, if you think about it, as a student ready leader, we're looking at these aspects, but we're also thinking about the aspects of what it means to be a transformational leader, to be empathetic, to have a clear vision, to understand what motivates those who are members of our team. We are thinking about making sure we have diverse viewpoints that are represented across the board. How do we bring all these together to create those environments that really hone in on these core principles? Every single person is an educator. And as leaders, as student ready leaders, as transformational leaders, we have to make sure that those voices are represented, that those experiences are represented, regardless of what you do at the institution and what you do within your sphere of influence. You contribute to the educational environment. And the other piece is that we believe strongly that every student deserves access to a high quality education. And educators, too, also deserve access to a high quality professional environment. It's fundamental in what we need to do to become more student ready. So, what do we mean by this? And it's all different aspects. The characteristics of a ready institution will greatly depend on institutional context and institutional culture. It's not going to always be the same. But at the core part of this, there are fundamental aspects of what it means to be student ready and to engage in that transformation leaders. If you are a transformational leader and you're a student ready leader, you are research informed. There is a wealth of research on what it means to create a student environment, a professional environment that is going to advance our goals. We cannot ignore the evidence of what we need to do to in order and how we need to utilize that in order to apply that to our institutional context and our institutional culture. We do our work based in evidence, based in research, not in our whims or what we seek to do or think for one group or another. We do this based in research. It is evidence based. And then it's also centered around students. And I mean all students. I tell people all the time, and I mean, it's almost like the educators that I work with believe strongly in helping every single student that is at their institution. They are not going to say they're going to help one and not help the other. Our job is to really hone in on what each student needs, what they are need to be supported in their environment. We also need to think about how we can help move them forward to achieve their goals, their defined goals, and what they want. So it's centered on who they are and how they want to engage within our environment. And it's based on data. That's why we have to look at student success outcomes. We have to set clear aspirational goals for our students. whether that's engagement in high impact practices, whether that's about them developing workforce ready skills, whether that is about helping them understand how to articulate those skills in a way that is going to show proficiency in critical thinking and problem solving and ethical reasoning and quantitative literacy, all of those learning outcomes that are at the center of why we do the work that we do. And then we think about the action required. We as educators, as student-ready leaders, as transformational leaders, we work with our teams to think very critically about the data questions that we need to ask, the inquiry process that we need to go through, how we need to think about the design and implementation of our academic and support services, the design and implementation of high impact practices, so that we can continuously assess, so that we think about how to deliver this in a way that helps prepare students for lifelong success. This is what it means to be student ready. These are the challenges that we as educators face. So, in the book, we lay out certain characteristics of student ready leaders, and you're going to see the alignment between what that is as a transformational leader and what that means as a student ready leader. They know who their students are, how they're doing and what they need to succeed. There's intentionality behind their work. And this intentionality is based on research. This is based on evidence. This is based on lived experiences. This is saying we're not just doing this on a whim, we're doing it because we have looked at institutional data. We have figured out, okay, what we need to do in order to address disparities in outcomes. And we actually need to think about how we are going to create this environment, create these learning experiences in a way that will reach and as many students as possible, scale that work, but also creating an environment where they can explore and they can engage with one another with civility and with respect. And then also, we talk about building and strengthening our capacity to achieve those goals. Many of us are on our own journeys as we talk about professional environment for learning. We have to then do this self assessment, as I raised in that question before, to figure out where we are. What skill sets and competencies do we need to work on in order to support this type of learning and value? Learning community, and then these values of what it means to be student ready, but also to meet our mission and our strategic priorities at our institutions, but with our system. We're self-aware and opportunistic. That's that self-assessment. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share with you a tool that SOVA helped co-create with colleagues in Texas about how then are we going to be a self-assess our own role of where we are as leaders. And then we also understand the big picture and we think long term. We don't just think about where we are in the moment. We think about the students that are preparing to come into our institutions, both from those who are post-traditional to those who are coming through the K through 12 pipeline. How then are we preparing to meet their needs? How are we being responsive? And then we observe our communities. We act, we innovate, we prioritize accountability, and it's expansive. It's not the responsibility of just the institutional leaders. It's not the responsibilities of those who are on the front line. It's not the responsibility just of mid-level leaders. It is expansive accountability for all of us because I believe in this widening circle of the work that we need to do. And we are truth seekers and we're truth tellers. We look at ourselves, we look at our communities, we then think very strongly about where our environment, what challenges, what opportunities are there as we do this work. And part of that truth seeking, and I just want to be clear that is that who our students are and their lived experiences and their backgrounds and their identities influence how they make sense of the world or themselves, how they create the environment and they participate in environments, and it's integral to who they are as learners. We have to then think about a knowledge base for all of the students that we serve from different backgrounds. How do we understand their lived experience, their cultural wealth that they bring? And how do we create curricula that it challenges them in a way to not, again, repeat what we're saying, but challenges them to think about their community, to think about their responsibility, think about how they are going to be part of this society. And I think that that's so important for us to learn more about each other and to have those high expectations that we set for all students across the board, and to appreciate that we may have different learning styles and that our multicultural background from all different perspectives are so important, and they make up the richness of our communities. And that is part of knowing who our students are and how their lived experiences contribute to the educational environment in a way where their diverse perspectives and their ideas are valued and welcomed within our community. And that is part of what it means to be educated, to be engaged in our society. So that is a huge part of the truth telling, the truth speaking, is that our job is about preparing students for success and preparing them to be culture to be ready, um, to be more student ready for the goals and for the values that they set for themselves. For themselves. So I want you to think about this. I want you to think about, do you know who you are as a leader? How you're doing on your journey for that, and what do you need to succeed? Because you can't be a transformational leader, you can't be a student ready leader if you don't do that self assessment and know where you are. And then you also know what you need to build and strengthen your capacity to achieve student ready goals. There are many tools out there, many tools and resources for you to think about. But I think that at the crux of our work, and I really want to hone on the mid-level managers, because I imagine that many of you who are on this call and on this webinar right now are mid-level leaders. I think that they play such a critical role in the success of any institution. And I'm not discounting the success of administrators and their role that they play, or those who are frontline. I think is across the board, but the skill sets of mid-level managers in the way that they then have to think about what they hear from what's happening from those who are on the front line, how they relay those messages to the leadership. It is such a critical role. And either if you're aspiring to be a mid level manager, or if you're thinking about how you can partner as an administrator in a more intentional way with a mid level manager, this toolkit, I think, is so important to help you address those skill sets that are necessary and important for this. And so in this, that was created by the Dana Center and by SOVA, we believe there are 5 key essential skills that you have to master. And if you look at the toolkit, you will see that there's a self-assessment. Of course, surprise, surprise, I used to work at ACNU. You know this, many of us, we love rubrics. There are rubrics for every one of these. We have a responsibility to use data effectively to engage and motivate. There is no more important time now than ever before to be able to show the data related to student success for the populations that we serve. No longer can it be, and it should never have been, and I'm sure at many institutions it's not, where we don't know. We should know who's participating in high impact practices. We should know who's developing proficiencies in those key defined learning outcomes. We should know that when we talk about what excellence mean and who's included and who's excluded, we know that data so that we can do those targeted efforts to actually help lift those who are not performing, advance those who are, and then figure out what they need to succeed. This has to be research informed and data driven. But we also have to build that trust within faculty and staff to know that we have a shared vision, as we talked about with transformational leaders, that we value their input, we value their diverse perspectives and how we're going to accomplish those goals and support. But building that trust and making sure that when we're told and when information is shared, we find a way to have that inform our decision making. Now, every single decision that is made will not probably be in alignment with what you believe and what you think should happen, but there's an opportunity then to hear from people, to hear from team members, to understand their viewpoints and their values, and then to help make an informed decision that is based on data. We have to have those functioning relationships with senior leadership so that we can tell those stories. We can show the data. We can say what's working and what's not working. And then to build those cross functioning teams that we talked about earlier that are part of transformational leadership and a part of what it means to be student ready. Because our job, as you saw when I showed you the continue, talked about being student ready, is about continuous assessment and continuous improvement. I am the first to admit we don't get it right all the time. There are opportunities always for improvement, but those opportunities are based in evidence and based in our shared commitment that we value the diversity of our students. We value what they bring and the assets that they bring to our community. We value the diversity of our educators because we want to make sure that every single student in our institution has an opportunity to thrive, they have a sense of belonging, and that they are being prepared for the goals that they set for themselves and meeting what we mean by what it says to be excellent in an academic standpoint, the skill sets and competencies that we know that will help set them up for lifelong success. So again, if you get a chance, and I hope that it's been put in chat, I can't see it right now, that the link to this, take the time to do that self-assessment. Where am I on this journey? What are the opportunities that I need to really put at the forefront? Because it's going to be different for all of us, and it's going to come in different ways in order to achieve the strategic priorities at our institution, to achieve the mission of our institution, and to achieve our goals, whether it's in our department or our programs, in order to advance. And I think these needs to be conversations that are had within meetings, regular meetings. I think we need to be looking at data. We need to be, and of course, we can't be overwhelmed with it, but looking at data critically at every meeting that we have to think about, okay, what are the inquiry questions? What are the things that we should be doing in our sphere of influence to help achieve and advance those strategic priorities? So I want you to think about this too. As you think about your behaviors that you need to do that you need to change, which we're talking about, but I also want to acknowledge the importance of self-care in this. There are so many things coming at us as educators and as leaders. So many aspects of challenges and opportunities for us to do our work. I want you to think about not only what we're talking about here about student ready leadership and transformational leadership and what it means to create those environments for success, but creating those environments for success are also you doing what you need for your own well being, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and that has to be there for you to carve out that time. Because if we don't do that, then we're not going to be able to meet our professional goals, and we're not going to be able to meet those goals that we have set for helping advance student readiness. So, your behaviors, as we're thinking about this from the student ready piece, we also have to think about the behaviors that may be hindering our own self care so that we can achieve our professional goals. And I don't want to diminish that as a key, this is a key part of what we mean by transformational leadership and what we mean by student ready leadership. I also want you to think, and as you heard me say, about a process for utilizing expansive accountability because many of us are carrying a heavy load of how do we keep moving forward and doing the work with limited resources, thinking about how we're going to do this work and make sure that we're staying true to ourselves and true to our values and who we are, but also thinking about how do we make sure that there's an expansive accountability for us to do this innovation and to act. And again, I want to go back to what it means to have expansive accountability. You can't do it all yourself, but this requires a strong ecosystem and it requires a shared responsibility. And that is both this way horizontally and it's also vertical across the board. It requires us to think about how we contribute, how we set our own goals, how we talk about how we contribute to the mission and vision of the institution and to the strategic priorities? And how then are we thinking about the actions that we need to take? Because remember, we said action is required if you want to be a student ready leader, if you want to be a transformational leader. We can't sit back. We have to actually lead with action, lead with assessment, lead with continuous improvement, lead with that in mind, because we do want improvements in our environment. So again, that expansive accountability has to be there. And I want this to be measurable. I want everything that we're talking about is about data, is about thinking about how we're going to measure this, how we're going to set these goals, not only for our programs, for our departments, for our institution, so that we can be articulate and know who's successful, who's not. How do we help them be more successful? How do we help those who are struggling in our environments in order to meet these shared goals? But I also want you to think about this. What is your truth? What is your truth? What is your why? What motivates you to do this work on a day to day basis? And in that truth, and in that truth telling, and in those motivational factors that we talk about for transformational leadership, do your actions align with what you say your truth is? This is just as much about what we need to do about our educational environment as it is what we need to do as leaders, as student ready leaders, as transformational leaders, as those who care about the educational environment that we design and deliver every day for our students, for the students that we value and appreciate and make a deep commitment to when they enter our institution. And this is such a key part of what it means to be a student ready leader, is making sure that our truth aligns with our actions. And that is in so many different aspects of the work we do. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for just giving me this time. I know we're going to have some about 20 minutes or so. I would love your reflections. I would love your questions. If I was going to be there for the lunch, that's what I had. I had about 40 minutes to do this, and I was hopefully going to walk around and have conversations with you. And I hope there's a way for us to actually do that here. So put your questions in the Q&A. I want to be able to address them. If there are things you want to share with the group, that's something that I want to make sure that we take advantage of in this time. And then going back to the questions that I raised at the very beginning, and I'm going to put those back up so that you can see them, is really about where you see the intersections of what you and how you characterize student ready leadership with transformational leadership. What do you think about for your leadership abilities? That, how do you harness them? How are you utilizing them to advance student success, to partner with community stakeholders, to think about fellow practitioners in this work? And how then are you thinking about student readiness to support the success of all students? So I want to put those back out there. I want to raise those to the groups. We want to hear your stories. Your lived experiences matter just as much as everyone else's, and the students that we're talking about, because they contribute to our environment. So I'm going to stop sharing now and see if we have any questions. Thanks, Lily, for coming back on. And we have any questions or comments that you want to make.
We do have a question in the Q&A, and so I'll just read it for you, Tia, and we'd love your feedback. You briefly mentioned targeted universalism. Our participant has been working on utilizing this in their work for years. Could you provide examples of how you have seen it used?
Yes, definitely. So we've been talking about targeted universalism for a while. So if you haven't seen it or you haven't looked at this work at UC Berkeley, there's a center. I'm blanking on the name of the person, but you can Google it, you can look and see that. When we talk about targeted universalism, our job is always about defining what success looks like for our students, all of our students. So we set for example, retention goals. We look at the institutional data and we set retention goals. We set goals for progression. We set goals for engagement in high impact practices. And so let's say, for example, that's 85% or 90%. And some institutions have done this. And I'm going to use high impact practices because I used to run that institute. So, and I love high impact practices. And I know you're utilizing that through the work that you're doing at CPE and in partnership with many institutions in Kentucky to talk about the value of the degree. So let's say we want all of our students, and some institutions have done 100% to engage in high impact practices, whether that's first year experiences, undergraduate research, community-based learning across the board. We want students to engage in it because we know that there's a direct relationship between what employers say they want students to actually do and be able to demonstrate their knowledge in, and then how it helps them develop critical thinking, like we talk about problem solving, teamwork abilities, written and oral communication skills. So that's a targeted universal approach. We're going to say 85%, 90%, 100%, whatever that is. And then we're going to look at our institutional data. And we're going to disaggregate that data. And we're going to see who is actually participating in those high impact practices, who's not, what are those barriers to success, who's accessing them or not. And it's around multiple different identity areas. So you can do this by those who are first gen, who are not first gen, those who are veterans, who are not veterans, those who are persons with disabilities or not persons with disabilities, those by race and ethnicity, across whatever it is. We look at those metrics and we say, okay, wait a minute, okay, who's actually participating in those, who's not? You set the aspirational goal and you say, okay, so let's say, for example, we have one group that's participating at 80%, one group that's participating at 7%. So what do we need to do for that 80%? What do we need to do for that 70%? What do we need to do for those who are at 60%? We serve and educate every single group. So it's targeted because their experiences may be different and they may have different reasons for why they're not accessing it, but we serve those who are at 80, those who are at 70, those who are at 60. We do that across the board. So that's why we talk about a universal approach and targeted universalism, but we also recognize the diversity of the students and their lived experiences, and there may be different barriers. That's what we talk about. That's targeted universalism. And it's a very simple way. I gave that example. So thanks, Lily.
Thank you. We have a wonderful comment just thanking you for this very timely and very inspirational talk. And so thank you for that, passing that along. And then another question from a participant. The question is, how would you suggest navigating a scenario when a student has a significant physical disability and may not be able to physically complete skills necessary within a technical program? We want those students to be successful and have equity in their academic and career choices, but also recognize there may be limitations.
Yeah, so first of all, we at any time that we are dealing with students who have, whether it's a physical disability or whatever, from their background or whatever, we want to make sure that we are thinking about the way we've designed that educational environment to meet their needs. And we're thinking about the assets that they bring. So how are we really thinking about or designing how we demonstrate the way that they complete and that knowledge, complete those skill sets and demonstrate that knowledge? It may not be in the way that we have traditionally thought about it, but we need to be more expansive in the way that people demonstrate success or demonstrate that they have gained that knowledge. And some people, and this is what we're talking about, the variations in communication styles or the variations in the way that they demonstrate what they know. How are we then thinking about how people from different backgrounds and different lived experiences and different circumstances demonstrate their knowledge? And are we confining them to demonstrating their knowledge in a way that is very, limited in the perspective? I'm going to say that probably is maybe the best word to use, without thinking about the ways that people can engage in our community that's based on who they are. So I hope that makes sense. I I think sometimes we think that the only way to demonstrate knowledge is through test taking or is through certain ways. I mean, I just feel that students should have the diversity of ways in which they can show that they've actually attained the knowledge and skills. And I would then encourage you to work with the student who may be experiencing one type of physical disability and those from another. I just think that it's important for us to recognize that where they may have one physical disability, there are also ways that we can think about how they can express themselves and express their knowledge through the abilities that they do have. And I just
Mhm.
think that that's important for us to be expansive and to think creatively about that as educators.
Thank you. We have another question. What are some ways you foster continuous improvement or assessment in your work that you recommend people should be doing?
So, first of all, quantitative and qualitative data. All the time. I think every single thing that we do, every program that we have should be thinking about an evaluation and assessment plan. We should be monitoring both from a formative to a summative process. I think that it's because as we're designing, we need to think about that from a formative perspective. We need to be asking questions from the community that we are engaging with that is either benefiting or from that particular intervention or that targeted service. We need to think about scale. We need to be thinking out constantly. And many institutions are doing this. Many are doing this on a regular basis. My concern and what I want to make sure this is that knowledge and that inquiry and that data piece is not just kept within, but it is shared, that is transparent, that we're conversant on it, that we're able to reference it. And then we're also have an ability to be explicit about how that work on continuous improvement aligns with the mission, the vision, and the strategic priorities of the institution. There is no more time than is important right now that we are explicit about how our academic and our social support programs and the work we do align with the mission and vision and strategic priorities of the institution. And we should be saying that, and we should be showing it with data. And that data is qualitative and quantitative across the board because it requires both. And those, from different perspective, qualitative and quantitative, should be valued. We shouldn't dismiss one over the other. We should be looking at the intersection of those as we're talking about this work.
Thank you, Tia.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from our audience
Yeah.
today?
Yeah. There's one here. Let me see. I see this one here. Yeah. You work with faculty who are resistant to measuring student success. Do you want me to address this one?
Oh,
Lily?
yes. Sorry, I
Okay,
didn't see
great.
that one pop in.
That's okay, no problem. How we should approach this topic with these resistant faculty members to best show them how this works. So the very first thing that I talked about, research informed. If you are doing any research on how students demonstrate knowledge based on the variations and how that is, the research shows that knowledge demonstration can be oral, it can be written, it can be in showing projects, it can be shown. I mean, there are so many different ways. And this is where we bring the research back to our communities to show that the work we do is not just through written exams. I mean, and the way students learn and the learning styles and the way that they uh, retain and then express their knowledge has to be expansive. It has to be expansive, especially given the conversation that we just talked about. I mean, with students who have different abilities and skill sets, we have to think about that. So, again, I'm going back to the very first thing I said about being student ready is research informed. And research shows that knowledge demonstration is not just linear in one way.
Thank you, Tia.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think from the original vision that we had of having you come in and kind of wrap up the Student Success Summit, you have definitely left us with a lot of really important things to think about, as well as inspiration, and just kind of that renewed energy that we need as we continue to go about this important work. So thank you so much, Dr. McNair. And we do hope to continue engaging with you and bring you back to Kentucky in person, hopefully soon, but for sure in other ways to continue to support our work here. So thank you very much. And I hope everyone who tuned in or is watching the recording, thank you for being with us. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you so much.